Right, right. So what I've done is because this is a carbon steel blade with stainless, you know, RWL 34 or 12C27 or any of the stainless 440Cs. There's lots of others stainless steel blades. It's not so important, but when you're making sheaths for carbon steel blades, I always add a bit of Resolene just where the knife sits. It seals the leather from the knife. It just helps prevent, you know, if they leave it in there a bit too long, or they get a bit lazy and they don't, you know, oil their blades and stuff. Like any knife, carbon steel blade shouldn't be kept within its sheath anyway. When you store it away, they should always be kept separate. You know, when you're out camping and stuff, it's not so bad, or bushcrafting, but if it's for a long period of time, you should always keep those items separate. Put some renaissance wax on your blades and keep your sheaths as two separate entities, you know, two separate items. While they're out, this just helps seal that leather from the blade itself, which helps with the corrosion. So it's a tip for you if you know, making sheaths for carbon steel blades. A bit of Resolene inside where the knife sits on the actual leather itself, and you can actually do it in the inside too. I find it is normally more than enough. Yeah, that should help. It doesn't completely eradicate it or prevent it, but it will help. So I've done that anyway, and just put a little bit on the strap like I said I would, just to help seal that too. I've just took the scratch awl and I've keyed in. It's not necessary, it's not needed so much on the actual bare leather itself, but because this has had dye on, it's kind of smooth. I've just put a key for the contact adhesive to take a hold of, and then what we'll do is we'll contact adhesive this side, contact adhesive the welt. We'll pop that on and we'll look at the other welts then, and I need a hole. I've got to punch a hole in yet where the press stud's going to sit. Whether I'm in two minds whether to go for a Sam Brown or whether to Sam Brown stud, or whether to go for a popper, and I think I'll go for a popper press stud, I think. And normally what I'll do is, if the pins are brass, I'll go for a brass press stud popper. If they're stainless, silver, chrome, I'll go for a silver one. That's normally how I'll work it to what I'll choose. Sometimes I'll go with a Sam Brown stud. You know, especially if you're making stalking sheaths for stalking type knives, press studs are kind of noisy. You know, and they do last a long time, but they're not as reliable as a Sam Brown stud. There's pros and cons with both items. For you that don't know what I'm talking about regarding Sam Browns, these are Sam Brown studs. These are stainless Sam Browns, and these are brass Sam Browns. They're antique brass Sam Browns. So I'm not sure yet. I'll have a look when I've put the welts in anyway. So let's get some contact adhesive on this welt. Sometimes I'll use this brush, sometimes I'll go to a lot finer brush. It depends on the size of the welt. If it's a thin welt, then this glue's a nightmare. If it's a thin welt, then I'll use a much finer brush. Anyway, what's happening is, as with this particular contact, as you put the brush in, all the glue rides to the top of the stem of the brush, and if you forget to notice that, it drips off it. Right, so I like my other one with my own brush, but I need to get that done. So because of time, I wanted to just only you know, be very, very careful when you contact adhesing up. You do not want that glue to run past that welt. You definitely don't want to be seeing that on your goods, on your leather goods or things that you make. It's an unsightly thing to see, and it's not very professional. You know, you don't want to be seeing contact adhesive seeping and going all over stuff. It's, you know, if you take your time, there's no need for it to be doing that. Okay. Sorry if I'm out of shot, guys. This is a bit where I have to really concentrate, because I do not want that contact adhesive to run past that line at the top. This is why sometimes I go to a much smaller brush too. If I take my time, I should be fine with this, but you know, don't try and put too much on, because you will run over then. Or if it goes over a little bit, you can, like when you come to glue them together, you will sometimes get a bit of overrun. But if you do, you know, which it happens a lot, just make sure you clean it off. Get your finger in, or a little Q-tip, little earbud, you know, or something, and just get rid of that excess glue. Right, what we do now is we do the back of this welt too, and as always this will have 2 coats, maybe 3, but I think 2 will be fine. Oh, I also dyed inside the welt, in the inside, so when you're looking, you know, it's not too unsightly, and more importantly the tops, you don't want to be seeing you know, 2 cream bits sticking out the top. You know, just get into the habit of dyeing those as well. It just takes a couple of seconds to run your dauber over that, and it gives you a much more better look. It'll just make your item look a lot cleaner and tidier and more professional. If you hear the fan, I do apologise. I've had to leave it on for a bit. It's really, really warm and muggy today. There's no air. Right, as how hot it is today, that's already dried. I can now go and apply. Like I say, in the winter time you'll probably have to wait a bit longer or give it a zapping. Here we go again. Just really be careful at this top point. If you let your contact adhesive dry properly, you shouldn't really get any run out at all, really. You know, you just want it tacky and sticky to the touch. You definitely don't want it still to be runny on the leather. That's when you squash the pieces together, that's when you'll get your overrun. Okay, nice and steady at the top. Okay, let that dry. And try and keep it within the lines. And give this its second coat. When you apply it properly, like I say, you'll get a nice, even, flat, just a shiny coat. That's what you should be seeing from your contact adhesive. If it's thinned down and it's runny enough and it's at the right consistency, that's what should happen when you apply it. When you come to touch it to check to see if it's about right for it to be bonded together, when you put your hand on it or your fingers on it, it should be gripping to your hands, but not like, it's hard to explain. Just be really tacky, you know, gripping to your fingers, so you'll have to just pull them off. you know, pay attention, real attention to the tops here, you know, with that glue. You want a good bit there, because you know your stitching will only come so far up unless you do an overlap stitch around the edge. Sometimes I will do that with certain, you know, when I make possibles pouches, and I've made a few like messenger bags and stuff like that. Then there's certain parts there where the stress points need that as well. I will do then. It's not so important, but with this bit here, you know, you want that bit right. Okay. Excuse me. Right. Just move that out of the way. Sometimes as well, these the fan you can hear in the background, if you've got like a portable fan, you know, they're nice to have on as well. Then what you do is, if you've got one of them, one's a long standing one, but if you've got like a normal type of fan, when you've put your contact adhesive on, just stick your leather sheath underneath the fan for a little minute, let the cold air blow on it, and that'll help it along as well to dry out and get your contact adhesive just right. Right, see if I can show you what I mean. See, it's gripping, but it's not. That's the kind of consistency you want on both sides. See, it's just tacky to the touch. That's perfect. Shouldn't get any run out at all with that at all. As you can see, it's just a nice even, no big globules of glue, or you know, just a nice even coat. Couple of coats which will, you know, it'll penetrate right into that leather. Okay, I'll just get this belt put on. Now I do this one side first and then the other side, following that line, but paying most attention to these top bits here, that these two line up. Because if it's a little bit short on the bottom and stuff, you can always sand that round, cut that round, you know, but here, up here needs to be perfect. Okay. You want to make sure that you don't go too far in with the welt too. So if anything, it's better for it to be sticking a little bit out and over on the edge. I mean, if you've cut things right, they should marry up pretty much perfect. But if you haven't, it's always better for the welt to be sticking out a bit rather than be sticking in. What I'll do before I tamp this down with the smooth face tammer is I'll just check, I'll dry fit this just to make sure that it's lining up as it should do, and it is, as you can see. It's just how I want it to be, you know, it's not too short on the edge or... Okay, once it's like that and I'm happy, just in case I have to peel it back and readjust it, which is very hard to do. You'll tend to find it'll want to pull all the fibres and stuff, so I didn't real press it too hard just in case. So if you're going to feel as though you're going to need to adjust it or get things just right, just gently lay it on first before you get it to seat properly. Right, okay, so now bashing time. Paying attention to those two bits as normal at the top, you know, giving those just that few extra whacks with a hammer. If you need to realign, or sometimes with a hammer it'll push it out a bit just from the pressure, you know, sometimes you'll need to just gently just coax it back in a little bit. There'll be enough movement for you to do that. Like I say, it's better to be over a little bit. It's better to be perfect, but you know, it's not always going to be the case. It's better to be over a little bit than in. See, if you've cut stuff out, you know, the best you can, you should find that everything's near enough, you know, not far off at all. And when you come to then just trim it round and burnish the edges and sand, you won't have to be cutting loads off and all that type of stuff. Okay, it'll just help with a neater edge when you come to burnish it, you see, if these cuts and these sides are all cut properly and together. Okay, right, there we go. So another test fit with a knife. See how it looks when the knife's going in. There's more than enough room, it's not touching the sides. See how that fits on there. I mean, there's a way to go yet with this welt. What I also do as well, if you've noticed, okay, I've just gone over, because sometimes what you'll do, I've just gone over very slightly with the die, if you've noticed, on the welt there. And it's, you know, that's not done as a mistake, that's done for a reason. Sometimes those little bits, there we go, these little bits where I've gone just slightly over with the die when I've come to dye the edges, those little bits will be exposed sometimes when you come to put here, or you know, you might be a little bit down like that and you'll see them, you know, or you know, between the gap between the two you'll notice it. So when you come to do these welts, especially like when I put the other two on and the end one, where this will sit like that onto the welt, you know, just go very slightly over with the die and it will just compensate for that. Right, okay, so now what we need to look at now is roughly how many more welts we need for this to be right. I know we need a kind of a long one, so I'm going to get that in there like that. I'm going to pop that on like that. I'll get the little clamp again. I'll pop that on a minute, just so that I can use both hands to manoeuvre stuff around and it'll keep it in place. Seat the knife properly, and then I can look down the side and see roughly what I need to be doing. You see, I could come from about there, I could squash it there, but there'd be too much of a transition then. I think you'll have too much of a, so I'll do a kind of a long one. So what I'll do is I'll take a little pencil and I can roughly see where I want this welt, sorry, to feather down to this particular one, and then the next one will be shorter to about there maybe. So what I'll do is I'll just make a little mark inside the welt there, and it'll be the same. Sometimes one will be needed to be shorter on the other side, depends how thick the knife is and the shape. Like this side's not as bad at all if you look, see this one's near enough closing up, but that side, this is where the tang is of the knife, and that's the thicker side. So but it's always better to make the welts pretty equal either side. So right, let's have a look now. Okay, what we'll do is we'll go from there and there with the welts, and we'll bring those two down now and we'll feather them right out. So I'll cut you off again. I'll get a couple of pieces, measure these out, and we'll feather that welt in. Okay.